Hello and welcome to the Blackout Podcast, where I get to talk to amazing people who do amazing things. And today I have Nami, the founder of Dream Talk Creative. Thanks for coming to the podcast today. First off, it took a while to make this happen, but you've been busy. Oh, well, first there was the pandemic too.
And then... Yes, all of those things were happening. And then before you know it, like time just flies away from you. Like yesterday was January, now it's April.
Right.
Time is fake.
Yes. So, what I want to do is kind of start like this, go on this journey with you and just start from like the beginning. Well, maybe not the actual beginning, but let's start from like the journey to Canada. Why did you decide to move to Canada? How was that process for you?
For sure. So I moved to Canada in January of 2014. I moved to Halifax as an international student. And at the time, so my background is like I am an Indian woman. I come from an Indian family. However, I grew up in this country called Oman in the Middle East. It's not like it's a gem of the Middle East, an absolutely wonderful place to grow up. And my family is still there. They live there as expatriates. And I decided to move to Canada because I wanted to experience what the world was in the Western Hemisphere, essentially. I grew up with like Indian people and South Asians around me, and I just wanted like a different perspective. And at the same time, like Canada is really great with immigration as well. And it just seemed like a really great opportunity to just get an education and immigrate and build a life for myself over here. So that's how I ended up moving to Halifax. I started at St. Mary's University. I studied accounting over there, funnily enough, and I graduated a few years ago. I graduated in 2019, so I experienced like 1 year of life before the pandemic, and I feel like the pandemic also like it just changed my perspective, my ideologies, and like almost everything. I would say in like a 3 or 4 month period. It was a very emotionally I don't want to say emotionally uplifting, but just an emotional experience, like, being in lockdown and like you suddenly are not around all your friends or your family. All you have is just you and your thoughts. And it was definitely something. And I would say a couple years before the pandemic, I was diagnosed with ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And that diagnosis also changed my life in many ways. So growing up with undiagnosed ADHD was a very tough experience because I always felt like I was falling behind my peers, even though I felt like I was working so hard. And sometimes it would feel like I was working twice as hard and not seeing the same results that would happen to my neurotypical friends. I didn't have the language for it at the time. And however, in 2018, I got my diagnosis and I was able to kind of change my life around. I was able to like change my life to kind of live with that, to cope with that. And I have since been able to grow so much since getting that diagnosis. So I feel like the diagnosis and the pandemic, even though they were a couple of years apart, those were very big watershed moments in my life that have happened. And since then, I realized that I always wanted to start my own business. I just didn't know what that business was going to be. And I had started talking about my experiences with ADHD on TikTok. And my TikTok took off a little during the pandemic. And I saw that there was this big community of people who were like, oh my God, I think I have ADHD listening to your stories. Like, I feel like I have it too. And I was able to create these conversations and this dialogue around, living with an invisible disability. And I took that experience and I was like, why don't I try to start like a business around social media? Like I understand engagement. I understand like what it is that people look for when they come on social media.
Mm,
And how can I, kind of help like small to medium-sized businesses by leveraging this knowledge?
mhm,
And that is how Dream Talk Creative came to life last fall. And it is still very much, I would say, in the baby phase. I've worked with a few clients already. But however, this is still very much like my side job. I
mm,
do have a day job, but hopefully someday in the future it might become a full-time thing.
mm.
Yeah.
Wow. So many things to
So many
unpack
things.
there.
Yeah,
Okay,
I feel
so I'm
like.
going to start with the whole Oman. What countries is Oman
Yeah.
close to?
So Oman is situated on the Arabian Sea. The Arabian Sea separates India and Oman. Oman is situated above Yemen and to
Ah.
the right of Saudi Arabia and just under UAE.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So like it's just like traveling a few hours and then you'd be in Dubai
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, so I would say like Muscat, so the capital of Oman where I grew up, Muscat to Dubai is kind of like what Halifax to Cape Breton is. Maybe a little longer, but like that's the
Oh, and you
general.
just drive? Would you usually drive or fly?
If we went to Dubai, we would usually drive,
Oh
yes.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a fan of long driving. Like I'm the one person that tries to fly to Cape Breton.
I
I'm
didn't
like,
even know there were flights to Cape Breton.
yes, but you kind of have to really plan it, right?
Okay,
Because it's like
okay.
one flight a week or some shit like this. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
I didn't
So
know that.
WestJet has one. Air Canada has one, I think.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to like, okay, I'm going for this meeting on this thing, and then I just. But I mean, if it doesn't work, then you just drive. The drive isn't bad. It's not bad. It's just, I'd rather just get in the plane and I'm
Just get it over
there.
with. Yeah.
Anyway, so what was it like for you growing up in Oman?
It was a very interesting, it's not, I want to say it was a very unique experience. So I was essentially what is called a third culture kid.
What
And
was that?
a third culture kid is basically a child who is growing up in a place that their parents have not been born or brought up in. So there's this concept like a third culture kid culture is very big in Oman because how it worked is Oman during the early 2000s, Oman was very big on expatriates. So, like, people from different countries would come into work there
Hmm.
for a period of time, but with the understanding that they will go back to their home countries eventually. So, you're
Mhm.
not immigrating there, you're working there as expatriates. And they were expatriates from many countries in Oman. So, like, India was a very big one because of the proximity. So was Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan. Um, Egyptians, a lot of European citizens lived there. There was a
Wow.
lot of American citizens as well. And how our schooling system was, and this might be interesting to you, is that the school that I went to was funded by the Indian embassy in the country. And so I went to the Indian School of Muscat.
Mm.
And however, there was also like a Filipino School of Muscat,
That'll be
a
funded by
British
the
School of
right,
Muscat,
right,
and like
right.
all of these different schools that were kind of funded by the embassies. So it's a very unique experience where you are growing up with people who are from the same background as you, but in a different country.
Mm.
So like I grew up in like a very Indian environment, but in Oman, in a different
Mm.
country, where nothing about the country is Indian at all.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, so it was very much like but growing up it was like I would say it was a very beautiful place. Like it's mountains and oceans and like
Wow.
very much a gem of the Middle East. Like there's a part of me that's like I wish people knew about Oman more, but I'm also like I also don't want it to become a touristy. I don't want to become Thailand. Like I just wanted to like I want
Yeah.
to gatekeep.
Right, right,
I
right,
want to
right, right,
gatekeep,
right,
but I
right.
also
It's
want
so beautiful.
to yeah.
People should see it, but like a week, not moving there or living there and taking Instagram pictures. But that's your job though. Okay.
Exactly.
So you decided to move to Canada.
Yeah.
As in, I mean, the Western Hemisphere is how you put it. There were different countries to choose from. Why Canada though?
Canada, because at the time it was the most progressive when it came to immigration. My thing was like, if I am gonna move, if my parents who funded my education, like if they're going to like um put all this money towards my education, I at least wanted to be in a place where I can have the option to stay.
Mm.
So, like the States and the UK, their immigration policies were very stringent at the time. And I was like, no, in that case, like Canada makes sense. And also because I grew up in such a hot desert country, I had never really seen snow. I was
Oh,
like, oh
right,
my
right,
God,
right,
I'm
right,
gonna go
right.
where it's like, it's gonna be so cool. I'm gonna like, my breath is gonna fog. That's gonna be so fun. And like, be careful what you wish for. Be
Right. I
careful
was
what you
gonna
wish
say.
for.
So, how was the very first winter?
Oh God, like I would say the first week was absolutely glorious because there was snow everywhere and I was so excited. I was like, this is so pretty. Like, oh my God, this is so nice. Like everything, look at all these you know how like ice like freezes over branch trees and it just looks
It
so
sparkles like
magical. It
crazy.
sparkles. It was so beautiful. I was like, oh, I came to the right place. And I was like, I was so stupid at parties. Like, as I would go out in the balcony and be like, ha, look, my breath is fogging. This is so cool. Yeah. And however, like after that first week, like
Oh,
I kind of spiraled a little because I now know that I probably went through a very intense phase of like seasonal depression, but I
right,
didn't have the language for
right,
it.
right,
And
right.
I was just like, because like not eventually, like when you grow up with like sunlight your whole life and it's suddenly taken away from you, you're like, my brain is not working right now.
Mm.
Yeah, so it was a bit of an adjustment that first semester to be like, oh my God, like why am I feeling this way? I'm feeling so unmotivated, unproductive. But eventually, like I was able to come out of that.
Mm.
I joined this student society on campus that would try to alleviate poverty in the community through running social enterprises
What's it
and
called?
Enactus.
Right.
Yeah. So I joined the Enactus team at my school, and that was a very big part of my university life, because I made lifelong friends. We ran some really cool projects, and it's like my perspective on this group has changed after coming out of university.
Change.
Changed in the sense of like, I grew up with a very like, I would say, um, like a very capitalistic mindset. Grew up with like a lot of like, oh my God, like you
You
like
gotta pay the rent. Gotta
gotta pay the
buy
rent and
this.
like it's like, oh, you gotta pull yourself up by the bootstraps and like
Mm.
make it work for you, completely ignoring all the privilege that I had. And after, however, like I left school, my brain fully developed. I read books, I listened to podcasts, I listened to like leaders in my community, and I'm like, no, I am like capitalism ain't it. Like this is not it. Like, at the end of the day, like it's good to where poverty is concerned, like we need to be addressing why is this happening? Why are people being homeless? Why are, like unless you act at the root cause, you're not really going to
Wasting
like
time.
find a solution that works long term.
Mm.
So like that is what my perspective is. Like I try to not view things from a capitalistic lens anymore in my life, which includes like my career and the relationships that I have with people around me and everything as such. For example, like I used to be very much a person who was like, I'm gonna climb the corporate ladder. I'm gonna
Mhm.
like, do this and that and like very girl boss energy kind of vibes. And however, like right now, my perspective is like the most important thing right now is for me to have peace and to be happy and to make enough money so that I live a good life and I can take care of people around me.
Mm.
That's my thing. And as long as I can meet those goals, I'll be fine.
Mm.
But like 4 years ago, that was not me.
I gotta be the manager of the thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Where
exactly.
do you think that came from, though?
The pandemic.
No,
Uh,
no, not the
oh,
change. That initial, this is what I have to do.
the
Girl boss
girl.
energy.
media growing up, and I would see like I grew up on like Hollywood movies of like these really, badass women like going
Devil
to
Wears
work,
Prada.
all those vibes. Like I was like, oh yeah, like how bad can hustling be? Like, and how bad is it? Like, like I just grew up with a very like viewing life from like very rose-colored lenses of like
Mm,
how hard is this going to be? And but while I was consuming those kinds of media, I never really considered the fact that like one, like none of these people lived with undiagnosed ADHD. Most of the people who are these so-called role models are usually male and white, and they're not like me. They don't have the same background as me. Like even if I work as hard as them, I'm probably never going to have that level of success because I just don't have that privilege,
yeah.
And like these thoughts only started like, coming to shape like during the pandemic.
What about the pandemic brought those thoughts though?
I would say it was when forgetting I just the murder of
George Floyd?
George Floyd. I'm so sorry, I forgot his name. I was just thinking of someone else. Like, I feel like the George Floyd murder really just kind of just kind of shook my perspective inside out.
Hmm.
Because like, I watched that video and it was just like it, it it was like 15 seconds of that video just kind of like overturning everything that I knew about like privilege and racism and intersectionality, that all just came to the surface at once. And I realized that like, the only like I you could stop me if this comes off as like insensitive, but I realized that like the only reason I'm not in that person's shoes is because I was born lucky, you know?
Mm.
It's like I was born with this privilege, and I was born with so like there is like nothing like it's 6 degrees of separation of like like I had just been so blind to like the intersectionality of things my whole life growing up,
Mm.
and that really just like, kind of slapped me into the right perspective.
I hear that, right? And I think in a way, you know, you can't really blame, I guess, upbringing or whatever, because as a parent, I don't know if you'll ever have kids, but I don't have kids, but I just think parents just want to shelter,
Yeah.
they want to shield you from the world is really bad, so I'm just gonna try and carve this place of safety for you. So growing up and seeing that that's your normal,
Yeah.
and then over time and observing the things you did is like, oh wait, something is not right here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what it was. And like once again, like, when I was, telling you about the environment that I grew up in, very sheltered, very much like I I lived on a schedule that was set by my parents, like no autonomy to kind of think outside of the box,
Mm,
essentially. And moving here and the pandemic and like the social justice movement that happened during the summer of 2020
mm,
following George Floyd's murder, like all of those things literally kind of overturned my perspective of these things. I would say like overnight.
mm.
Like it was just I started like really looking at the role model, like the people I considered role models, and I was like, this it does not make sense for me to have role models like these anymore.
Mm,
Like I need to be listening to stories of I need to be listening to stories from the perspective of BIPOC individuals. Like
mm,
I need to be hearing stories of people from I need to be listening to stories from leaders in my community. I need to be listening to stories from the indigenous people in Nova Scotia of like, the struggles that they're going through.
mm.
And that was also like the first time that I actually read up on Africville and stuff. Whereas like before that, like none of these things were like they're never discussed, and
Mm,
like they're never discussed. They were never like put out in the open. Like they were not really taught in school unless like it's a subject that you had to choose or something. And
mm,
I was just like, yeah, I like all of these things. I'm just like, nope, I can't be girl boss capitalistic energy. Like, no, I can't do that anymore. Yeah.
So, what are some of the changes you actually enacted in your life
Changes for
based on, oh, this is what life really is? Are there things you changed personally?
I would say like I try to look for communities where I could give back to people.
Mm,
And that is where I found the Global Shapers group. The Global Shapers is an organization that was started by the UN, and they basically have hubs across the world. And kids get together, kids, I mean, like youth get together in these hubs to come up with project ideas to give back to their community.
mm,
And I've been involved with the Global Shapers community since the fall of 2020. And all that we do is like we try to like engage youth and engage youth and engage youth and like create dialogue about what's happening in the community and how we can give back.
mm,
And since then, like that's been a really it's been really good to like be in a part of a community that cares about these things.
mm,
And also, and this may sound small, but I really took a look at like the people I was following on social media, and before the pandemic there weren't a lot of thought leaders on it. And since then I was like I've started following like community leaders that are in Nova Scotia, a lot of Black leaders, a lot of Indigenous leaders at the time, and I've been like listening to like what they say. I've been trying to keep up with their podcasts, and I've been trying to like read up on books
mm,
on what they are doing and what is the messaging that they're putting out. And like those are the things that I try to do. And at the end of the day, like once again, I keep asking myself of like, how can I give back? What can I do? What am
mm,
I not doing enough? Like, there are some situations where like as a non-Black person of color, you recognize that there is privilege in that too. And sometimes, like, the best thing you can do is like donate to causes.
mm,
Donate to causes. If you have money to spare, like, give the money to communities and to organizations, grassroots organizations
mm,
that actually are doing the work. So, I would say like those are some of the changes, the bigger changes that I've enacted in my life.
mm,
And also like tried to like have more in-depth conversations with um more in-depth conversations about what it means to be Black with my Black friends, and try to like just try to like understand their perspectives, and just to understand their perspectives and where they're coming from.
mm.
So all of these things I would say are just a few examples. I am by no ways perfect, but it's like it's like the acceptance that I will never be perfect, but I'm always going to be open to growing and learning and changing myself.
Doing the
Like
work.
doing the work,
Yeah.
doing the work. And I know there's this narrative about, oh my God, it's so exhausting. I'm like, what is exhausting about it? Like, I, I personally don't understand that. Like, it's for me, it's like when I'm presented with stories of people, of things that people have gone through, when I'm presented with facts and figures and studies, I'm like, why is it so? Why are you debating that?
Mm.
Like, why would you even want to debate that?
I think
It's
I think some of these people that do that, it might be that it makes them uncomfortable, and that's their defense. Like,
probably.
also it can be a lot of work too, though.
It can. I guess so. I like that's just like me putting my yeah. I guess that is right.
Okay, let's lighten the thing. So I remember coming to shoot something at your apartment. I'm like, there's a piano in there. Turns out you can play and stuff.
Yes.
What's the story
For the
behind?
piano,
Yeah.
so I think I was like 5 years old or something when I saw someone play the piano at a hotel, and I was like, I want to do that. And my parents put me in classes, and I started playing the piano when I was six
Jesus.
years old.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very young. Like I couldn't, like my legs were not long enough to like reach the pedals of the piano.
What do those things do? Because there are like three of them or
There are
whatever.
three of them. And the one on the far right, it sustains the sound. So like
So
when
like,
you, so it's like, woo, it goes like that. And the one on the far left, kind of mutes the sound a little, makes it
why
come off
would you
as
mute it though?
you need it at times.
Oh,
You need
okay.
it at times. And here's the kicker. Nobody really knows what the middle one does, and we just never.
So the middle one is just there
It's just there.
abandoned.
I don't know what it does. I've only played the piano for like 20 years. I don't know what it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so six. Holy shit. And what would I guess what do you do? Because to me it looks like maths. You know, no, it does.
Yeah.
Like
It's
the thing, you have to count and there's quarters
yeah.
and there's like and you have to read that thing. What
Yes.
do they call it? Like
It's called just reading music notes. Um it's its own
and you
language.
can like know what
Yeah.
key is.
Yes. It
Do you
takes
start learning like when you started at 6 to learn the thing? Do you also start learning the notes then, or
yeah.
holy shit?
Yeah, that's how you start learning the notes. And like how it worked, I feel like as a kid, like when you're learning the piano, you would only get like when I started music classes, like all I wanted was to just like sit at the piano and like go for it. But how it worked is like my music teachers were like, no, you first need to like get the beats with your hands right. And once you can like play out the rhythm and the beats with your hand, only then you can go to the piano. That was so frustrating. So like you'd have to learn how those beats, all those quarters, all those half notes and everything. Once you can get those right, only then you can go to the piano.
So once you could start learning piano, was there a particular song you really enjoyed playing?
You mean when I was a kid or
when you were a kid?
all I wanted, like this is gonna be so corny or cheesy, but like, are you familiar with Beethoven's Für Elise?
Yeah. Da-na-na.
Yes. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. I just wanted to play that song. That was like one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to play the piano. Is like I just want to be able to play that song. And
So how well can you play it now?
I can play it pretty well now. Like I can do it a pretty good job. But like I was able to finally like I think I was able to like proficiently play it, and by the time I was like 9 or 10 years old, and I got like
God damn.
yeah. But it was also like a lot of practice and.
Do you ever get to a point where like I can do this now, or you just always have to practice?
You have to practice. Like it's like I don't practice as much anymore because there are like a lot of songs like come naturally to me. But I would say like when I was at my peak performance, I would say when I was like 17, that was when I had given like my final music exams. And I was practicing like 6-7 hours a day during
Wait,
that time.
like straight or
Sorry?
6 hours
Six,
straight?
7 hours, 6-7 hours, like maybe with 30-minute breaks, like once or twice. But like those exams were intense.
Okay. What would you do? You just sit down and play the music and stuff, and then what would the exam be? What would they score you on?
They would score you on how accurately you can play the piece, along with like the emotion
Wait,
behind it.
emotion?
Yes.
You have to do like this?
Yes, there were no. That's exactly what it was. So like how it happened in like a typical like piano exam was that like you would literally get marked on like how well you position yourself. Like like you have to like sit with like but you have to sit with your feet straight. Like if your position was like too bent or like too like not perfect, they could fail you on the spot.
Wait, fail?
Fail you, yeah.
They even mark you down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whoa.
Like if your like position is not correct over the keys and stuff, like you'll be failed. Like
does how you move your fingers also count?
Yes,
too?
very much so. Very much so. And like there's this thing in piano is that like you're always supposed to keep your fingers bent.
Why?
Like because that is how you play. Yeah, you always played like with bent fingers. Like if you go straight, you can lose marks for like playing straight. So like, yeah, there was a lot of like now I'm like, oh my God, they took me
What do
too
you remember
seriously.
what the piece was for your exam?
Yes. So like for my final exam, for like we had 8 grades in my music school and for the music program that I went through. And in the 8th grade, we had one Mozart, one Debussy, and one Scarlatti. And these were all like these giant, like really big pieces. I remember like the Mozart piece was like 16 pages long. And
Oh, how do you flip this? How do you flip the
that's
thing?
also practice. Like you gotta like do that. It was, yeah, it was intense. It was intense.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, that's crazy.
Yes.
Holy shit. You know what? I thought you played piano to relax. That doesn't sound
It
relaxing
was
at
no,
all.
no, it was not relaxing. It was not relaxing. That is why, like, when we were chatting before I was like, yeah, like there was a time in my life when I wanted to be a concert pianist, but like all those practicing and the exams, it just like killed my love for wanting to pursue a career in
So
it.
so let's just say you went down that route, right? You finish a thing. What would be the next thing to do? Do you just like join on a like what's the next
The
step?
next step would have been to go to a proper like music school, like so um Berkeley School of Music
Berkeley,
or
yeah.
like the in England there's like the London School of Music. Like those would have been like the natural next steps. But by that time I was like also very much like, okay, no, I need to go to university and get a degree, which is like whatever. But
So accounting, what's the story there?
the story there is, like I was saying, I moved here as an international student and I live in a perpetual state of anxiety. So my thing was like, what can I study that will like guarantee a job
Mm.
like towards the at the end of my degree? Because I was also worried about like immigration and stuff. I wanted to remain employed and remain in the country. So that's why I picked accounting. It's just like it's gonna like get me through school, it's gonna get me a job.
So the anxiety, what is behind that anxiety?
I guess I would say like living with undiagnosed ADHD for like, throughout my childhood and teenage years, it's like I was in a perpetual state of panic that I'm falling behind, that I'm not doing things good enough, that I'm like lived with a lot of low self-esteem and trying to make up for it essentially. And like all of those things like just led to a perpetual state of anxiety.
Mm.
I was just like, I was constantly worried that I was going to fail or fall behind and just try to
So
compensate for that.
what were would they I guess what were some of the symptoms of like the ADHD that made you decide to go get that tested?
Yeah. So, for like, first of all, like a background on ADHD is that so there are many differences between the ADHD brain and what is called a neurotypical brain. So, brain that does not have like ADHD or any other disorders on the spectrum. And there's this thing in a very, very dumbed down way to explain. There's this thing called neurotransmitters, and neurotransmitters are there in your brain to pass messages from like one part of your brain to another, and those are the messages that tell you like, hey, I'm going to put sugar in my cup of coffee before pouring down the coffee, or like messages like that, like very basic like day-to-day messages like, oh my god, I'm going to leave my house, so I'm going to wear my jacket and take my keys and take my phone and wallet and then leave. And however, in ADHD brains, those neurotransmitters are abnormally low, and that's why that messaging is very confused in our brain. Like one of the reasons why I looked for an ADHD diagnosis was because I was having a very hard time just being able to leave my house. Like I would just be scrambling over like my keys, my phone, my wallet, my jacket, and I would like literally like I would be 30 minutes late everywhere. There was this one time I almost like I was almost like 20 minutes late for an exam and stuff, and it was just getting too much to cope with.
Mm.
And that is why I sought out that diagnosis. And after getting the diagnosis, I got on medication, and I've been trying to like cope with it holistically as well by
Mm.
setting rituals and like just going to therapy and counseling and just helping me live with it essentially.
Mm.
So, is was that your question about? I forget what your
No,
question.
yeah, like I guess
Yeah.
the things, but you kind of mentioned it like
Yes.
I need to do this, I need to do that.
Yeah. So, like in a very dumbed down way,
Mm.
like that is what
So
you
I
know.
guess what was the final push that is like I need to go get tested. You have to get tested, right?
You don't have to get tested, but I highly recommend it
Okay.
because like one, you will finally have access to different supports and resources. Although with Nova Scotia's healthcare right now, I don't know how accessible it is. Like last I heard, I know that when I was talking to someone, they said that they've been waiting for an ADHD diagnosis for 18 months
Mm.
at the end of 2022, and like we're aware of like what Nova Scotia is like right now. But what pushed me to get that, I think my final push was like I was in a class where I was able to understand everything that was being taught to me, but I was not able to pass my like midterms. I was not able to like get through my exams because like when I was sitting in an exam room, it was just like my brain was just not processing the information that was presented to me.
Mm.
Like I was just like I don't think I'm gonna like be able to finish school at this point if I don't seek some help.
Mm.
And that's when I went to a therapist for the first time because I actually thought maybe I'm just like depressed and anxious. And those are symptoms of living with undiagnosed ADHD too.
Oh.
I was like, maybe I'm just that. And that's why I'll go to her. And then I started talking to her about these things. And she was like, I think you may have ADHD. You're going to send you to a doctor who's going to like send a referral to a psychiatrist.
Mm.
I went through those channels, went to a psychiatrist, and like a couple weeks after that, he was able to diagnose me with ADHD and literally took some medication. He gave me some coping strategies. And for like I went from like almost failing on a midterm to getting like a 98% in like a matter
Oh.
in like less than a month. And there was a lot of relief from that diagnosis. I feel like it changed my like I've been saying it changed my life a lot in this podcast. Like it's changed my life so much, but it also made me grieve. Like I grieved the childhood that I would have had if this was
Right.
discovered earlier, you know?
How did you handle that though?
A lot of crying, like
Right.
yeah, like put simply, like a lot of crying. Like sometimes I would look back at like childhood photos and like I would remember like how I was feeling in those photos. You know, whether it's
Mm.
like being stimulated in crowded environments and like just trying to like put a straight face through, grieving those experiences, grieving moments where I could have been celebrated or I could have just been like happy. Like that was also a very um, eye-opening moment for me, a very emotional experience at the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
Yeah. And I still like, you know, I'm working on healing my inner child. Like I feel like this is going to be a lifelong journey.
Right. I
But
mean,
yeah, but I have the supports around me. My partner also has ADHD, and we kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and
mm.
it's been
Talking
good.
of your partner,
Hmm.
you are brown, he's white.
Yes.
And I'm making this film with these amazing sisters, and it's exploring that. And I think I don't want to say, but I think you might have some of your story in there because she writes really personal stories. And I was wondering, what is your congratulations on 2 years, first off.
Thank you.
But like, how do you navigate that? Because I mean, I don't have that experience. I'm just curious.
So navigating an interracial relationship,
Mm.
I would say like when we got together for the first time, like first of all, like he is absolutely incredible. Like he is one of the most incredible people I've ever met. And he already came into the relationship being very knowledgeable about being very knowledgeable about the nuances.
Mm,
And it's always been like a growing conversation though. Like with different stages in my life, like we keep talking about like what this is going to look like with me being brown and with him being white, but it ultimately comes down to how open they are to learning. And if they're someone who's open to learning, I don't think navigating that is going to be a challenging experience. But if it's with someone who is like, nope, my way or no way, you're not going to like be in a happy relationship at all.
I
Yeah.
mean, isn't communication one of the keys to making a relationship
Yeah.
work?
Yeah. And like my partner and I, we actually took a workshop on communication.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we
That's
we
great.
literally took a communicate. We're like, we're not perfect. Like I followed this therapist on Instagram, and I saw that she was doing a communications workshop, and we both took it and took
Mm,
notes and discussed and like had that open dialogue. And I think that's very important in, you know, like any relationship, interracial or not.
Okay, so let's talk about Dream Talk.
Yes, sure.
Wow, I mean, you're doing this accounting thing, but then you're like, this is what I feel passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
Why that name, first off? What's the story then? How do you run your business?
Oh my God. So like I spent like way too long trying to think about a business name. And I just came out like it was just rolling off the tongue. I was just like, sorry, kind of. I was like, when I meet like my idea was like if I meet a business owner, I'm gonna be like, talk to me about your dreams. And it
Right.
just kind of spun into like Dream Talk Creative. And as of now, like I am offering services in social media marketing and content creation. So these are my two main services at this time. I will probably offer consulting services in the near future. I'm still working on the details around that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been great so far, a really good learning experience, something that I'm very passionate about. I love that I get to be creative and analytical at the same time, which
Mm.
is like, kind of getting the best of both worlds for me.
Mm.
And yeah, if you know anyone who's looking for social media services, like hit me up.
Okay, so say I'm like, oh, I have a okay reach my podcast, but I want to like really dig in and blow up my social media, and I talk to you. What happens from that point on?
Okay, so like, are you looking to like get more reach on
I,
your
I
or
guess, I
yeah,
don't know.
I feel like so this is like step one is first of all understanding like what exactly it is that you want from social media,
Mm,
right? Like you're on a platform, like do you have social media for the sake of it, or are you looking to get more listeners? Are you looking to like get more guests, or are you looking to like get more sponsorships, or like what is it that your goals are? And once you have your goals down, that
mm,
is where you can like kind of tie it back to what social media can do for you.
mm. So
So,
we define our goals and then you get
yes,
to work.
exactly. And it may sound like even though it sounds like the most obvious thing, it actually does not feel as obvious, Because you're like,
Because
what exactly it is do I need? Like I'm on Instagram and TikTok because I need to be, right? Should I be doing anything more? What exactly am I looking for over here? And like
yeah.
once you start answering those questions, that is when you can come up with a social media plan
Mm.
and eventually convert those plans to like what do you need.
Wow.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
chat later.
Yes. But I mean, it's wonderful talking to you, but I can't let you go without asking about TikTok, right?
Sure.
How did that blow blow up happen? How did you get so many followers? I think it's
I'm at like 10,000,
yeah.
a little over 10,000 followers. I hit that mark this year. And honestly, I feel like TikTok is one of those platforms where your like the algorithm is so phenomenal that it understands what it is that you're looking for. And if you can make that work for you, like you're golden. So for me, like I just started talking about ADHD. And I started talking about living with ADHD, what it's like in your career, how to get access to resources in Canada, and like, how to talk about it with your family, your partner, your friends. And just through that, like, I think the most rewarding part of TikTok has been like creating that community, and it's still
Mm.
expanding. And sometimes the messages that you put out on TikTok really it really stays. So it's April 2023 right now, but one of my videos from February of 2022 is going viral. And like there are a lot of
Oh,
people who are seeing this, and they keep coming back to my platform.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But so that is how like that initial like blow up kind of happened.
Mm,
That being said, like I'm very much someone who is like, I am not one to like chase numbers or likes or anything like that. Like
mm.
my perspective has always been like, I keep thinking about like another brown girl with undiagnosed ADHD, and what am I going to like
Oh,
tell her? How
mm.
can I help her? You know?
Okay,
And
well,
yeah.
that is, saying that that is a really nice place to end. What will you tell that person?
Yeah, I would tell that person that I understand that validation is important, but at the end of the day, like only you can validate yourself the most, you
Mm.
know? Find love in places that are willing to give it to you. And also, like, get on the wait list for the ADHD diagnosis. Like, it will actually change your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nami, thank you so much for coming to I Lie. Actually, no, so how did you learn that for yourself though, right?
The
Yeah.
um ah, trial and error.
Right,
Trial
right.
and error.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, right now. Really, thank you so much for coming
Of
to the
course.
podcast today.
Of course. Thank you so much, Israel. This has been fantastic. Thank you for this opportunity. And I hope you have a lovely weekend.
You too.